Hey, what's happening? Is somebody home in there? This is Robert Phoenix. Let me just turn up the levels on my mic here so I can hear myself. What do we got here? We got microphones. Just want to... Yeah, there we go. Now I can hear myself, and hopefully you can hear me too. What's going on? This is Robert Phoenix back from vacation with 15 minutes of flame. Yay! Good for us! Good for us! Are you feeling good in America today? Are you feeling good across the planet today? Are you waking up with a smile in your heart? With a happy song, a positive song, a meaningful song, a synchronistic song buzzing through your head? If so, congratulations. You're off to a good start. And for those of you who are well into your day, if perchance you should be listening to this at some other point in time, I hope it's been a good one, meaningful, and that every single moment has led you to greater and deeper understanding about who you are in relationship to this grand adventure that we're all on. I just got back from a week in Florida, which was quite nice, to be honest with you. For the most part, it was a sandwich vacation. You know, when you go on these vacations, you learn about things. Like if I ever go back to Florida again, I will skip Tampa. There were some nice people when we met in Tampa, don't get me wrong. But if I ever go back, I'll just fly right into Fort Myers and go to the island and skip Tampa. Tampa's an interesting place. Let's put it that way. Into Tampa Island, out of Tampa. The island was great. Spent a lot of time at the beach. I got sunburned. I guess that's what you do when you go to a beach, you get sunburned. I tried not to, but I'm just a white boy. What can I say? And it was good. It was relaxing. And I remember the first day I got there and really got onto the beach, and I laid down and I collapsed. And I fell into a pool of exhaustion. You ever have those moments where it's just like everything just catches up to you and you're laying down and it's almost like you just can't get up? I don't know. That's where I was. I'm in a regeneration mode, a regeneration program. This is a kind of an important piece of my experience right now. Vital, to say the least. Vitality is vital. I'm stating the obvious. So we did the vacation. It was me and my mother and my son. We have a very small family. And it's always weird, going out and you see these families. There's like two variations of families that you see on vacations. And we're not one of them. One variation is the younger family. And it's the younger family with 2 or 3 kids. And, speaking of vitality, they've got it. And, it's a good scene for them. So that's one version. The other version of family that you see on vacation is the mob. It's more of a gang than a family. And they'll show up and there'll be like 8 or 9 of them. And not always pleasant people. They're surly. It's like, hey, we've got strength in numbers. Don't mess with us. Not all big families are like that, don't get me wrong. But those are the two versions of families you see when you're on vacation. You either see the mob or you see the young family. Every now and then you see it's not a family, it's a couple. Generally older. Not necessarily younger, generally older. We've fallen in different categories. Me, my mother, and my son. So it's kind of a generational thing. And my son is too young to have a girlfriend. My mother's husband, whose birthday it is today, by the way. Give a round of applause for my father, who was born on August 1st, 1935. Boy, was he a typical Leo. Holy smokes. He even had a Leo tattoo emblazoned, a beautiful lion emblazoned on his arm. He's not an astrology guy, but he had that Leo lion emblazoned on his arm by perhaps maybe the most influential tattoo artist of the 20th century, Lyle Tuttle. You got him at Lyle Tuttle's tattoo parlor in San Francisco, back when people weren't really getting tattoos. This was in like 1972, I think. 71 or 72. I remember driving up to San Francisco, which I think he drove up there by himself, and he came back with a tattoo. It was his birthday. Today's his birthday. He was a complicated man. I remember one time he said to me, "If you strike the king, you better kill the king." Now, is that not a Leo thing to say? It's a typical Leo thing to say. That's what I think. So today's my old man's birthday. I'm not going to get into too many stories about him. I've talked about him in the past. He was kind of larger than life, let's put it that way. And we had a very complex relationship, to say the least. Anyway, I tried now to look at the most positive things that he brought to my experience, which I think we all should do once we get over the shock and awe of being raised in the 20th century. We were at the Henry Ford Museum home in Fort Myers. We were there on Sunday, and we were there for Henry Ford's birthday, who happened to be a Leo, and it was quite interesting. My mother was kind of a history buff, and she was really into this book about Florida and the expansion of Florida, and how Henry Ford and Thomas Edison played a large role in the expansion of Florida. She'd read this book, and she started rereading it while we were in Sanibel Island, which is where we vacationed, and it was quite fascinating. She kept talking about, what a hard-ass Henry Ford was, and how tough he was on his son Edsel. And Edsel was a ne'er-do-well, and Edsel hung out with, artists and thinkers and creative people because Edsel had ideas, and Henry Ford he wanted to just make one car, and he wanted that one car to be black, and he wanted to just, keep making that car. And meanwhile, Chevrolet and GM were kind of out-developing Ford. They were creating cars in different colors and different styles and different innovations. And Edsel said, "We're going to get our ass kicked if we don't change what we're doing here." And so he fought with he didn't really fight with his father, but his father wanted to fight with him. Anyway, kind of an interesting dynamic with, I felt like there was some Henry Edsel going on with my father and me in a lot of ways. It's kind of strange. And we happened to be there on Henry Ford's birthday at his interesting place, his home in Fort Myers. And it was right next to Thomas and Edison. And they have a museum there. And they have a lot of Edison stuff and they have some Ford stuff. And there's a film about Henry Ford that you can watch. It's narrated by the late, great Oliver Platt. And history has not been kind to Henry Ford. Let's just put it this way. His legacy has been rewritten in many ways to invoke this figure of fear, paranoia, and ultimately kind of the ugly American. Because Henry Ford wrote a book called The International Jew. And Henry Ford was not a big fan of what he called organized Jewry. And what he was really talking about was, he was talking about the banking interests. And he was using some very, very exact language around his distrust and distaste of the quote-unquote banking interests of this country and the world. And the people who would be most offended by that book eventually got back at Ford and most of the automobile industry by bringing the unions in. And Ford despised the unions. It was like having a third party to your business that had no right being there. And GM and Chevrolet capitulated to the union's demands. And Ford didn't. He said, look, I'm all for a living wage, and I'm going to help these people, but let me do it, stay out of my business. And that didn't work out too well. He hired some thugs to beat up some union guys, and pictures got out, and he couldn't stem that tide. Just was not going to happen. And I've got mixed feelings about unions. My father had my father had a union job most of his life. He worked for the warehouse union, and then he worked for another union that had to do with food delivery. Some sort of food delivery union. Teamsters. He was a Teamster. It was all under the auspices of the Teamsters. So they helped my father get work. He paid his union dues and all that stuff. And look, there are things that we have to have checks and balances in the workplace for conditions that are unfair. We don't want to become slaves and robots, although we're kind of becoming that already anyway. So I totally get that. But the unions became just metastasized. And then, ironically, they became the tool of management. But if you look at what happened with the unions in Detroit, whether it was Ford or Chevrolet or GM, American Motors, which was started by Mitt Romney's father, George Romney. If you look at any of those businesses, a lot of them had to leave because not only the unions, but all of the different rules and regulations and pieces that were impeding on the productivity of the automobile industry in Detroit. And of course, globalism came along and it was like, hey, we can get a better deal over here. And they didn't see the Japanese coming. They should have, but they didn't. And it became a very different environment in that part of the world. And it was a really interesting documentary, and Ford eventually had to capitulate to the unions, and it was his son who did the deal. His son Edsel did the deal, and he gave the unions everything they wanted and more. An interesting dynamic. Henry Ford, of course, born on Sunday. He was a Leo, and his son Edsel a Scorpio. Sun square sun. Here we go. Third sip of the cup of coffee. Very strong, very potent coffee. I had an experience the last night in Tampa. And it was one of those experiences where you kind of zoom out and you say to yourself, what happens if the world ends right now? And I'm stuck with these people. You ever had that moment in time where it's like, what happens if all of a sudden things just go off the rails and you're with a group of people that you have no connection to, and you look around and you say, if that happened, I'd be in deep shit. Well, that's what happened on Sunday night. We rolled into this hotel. It's called the Bay Express or the Bay something hotel. And we got it online, and the pictures looked good. It looked like a kind of a hip kind of redo of a hotel on the bay there. It was cheap. It was close to the airport, so I wanted to get my mom out early. So we rolled into this airport, and we're there 4 o'clock. You think 4 o'clock is like a good time to check in, right? No. Not at this hotel, because people are leaving at 3 o'clock. How does that happen? How does a hotel allow people to leave at 3 o'clock? You've ever been on a cruise ship? If you haven't, don't. They're horrible. But I was on a cruise ship one time, and the disembarking process is like a rung of hell. It truly is. You've got to get out of your room, get all your stuff, and everybody goes into the main area of the ship where they have to sit for roughly 2.5 hours in this main area while they start to turn the rooms. Because by the time they get into port, they're going to start to take on new people. So they're flipping everything. So they got to get everybody out of the rooms. You can't stay in your room until you pull in. In that process, you're there with everybody. It's not pretty. It's not a pretty process. People are hungover. They don't want to, their cruise is over. Maybe they had a really great time. They don't want to go back. There are a limited number of bathrooms to use. Let me just tell you, it's not a pretty picture. Well, so this was kind of like the same thing because you had all these people coming into the hotel because they're checking in. What are those people doing this late checkout? And there's just this mob in the lobby. And you look around, especially this hotel, I'm thinking, oh boy. This was kind of like an every man for themselves sort of environment. That's what it was like. It's really not pleasant. Not pleasant. And, I do my best to be conscious, to be compassionate, be clear with people in the public domain, ask them how they're doing, look them in the eye, recognize them. And if they talk to you, try to have a semblance of a conversation that's at least polite, if not somewhat meaningful, even if it's for a few moments in time. That's how I roll. And we're trying to get into this hotel. And, there's the area where you roll in. You roll in, you unload, and you go in. That's what you do. You roll in, you go in, and you check in. And even if your room isn't ready, you hang out in the lobby, which is the equivalent of the main area of the ship when you're disembarking. But I can't. There's a log jam right there in the area where you're supposed to drive up to the door and take your stuff out. There's cars and they're not moving. And one of them is this van. It's a passenger van. So finally we get a parking spot and I walk up to the driver. And I asked him to roll his window down. I said, hey, it's pretty damn rude just parking your van here. Don't you understand? Are people trying to get into this hotel and unload? And there's some guy from, I hate to talk, here I am, man, I'm the ugly American. Some guy from another country. And then it's like, then you get into this situation, right? And you ask yourself as a man, can I take this guy? But at 56 years old with a bad back, I still have to ask myself that question. Because it comes down to some of these things sometimes. You never know. And if you don't ask that question, then you're not fully alive. You're not fully assessing the situation. So I don't know. I don't know if I can take the guy or not. I'm looking at him. He's, looks thick. Who knows? Maybe he's got a temper. So you have to reserve judgment. And then finally they all just pour out of that van. And then my mother says, there's your friend. Oh, he's got his oxygen tank with him. I'm like, I could take that guy. I could take it. Where is he? Let me give him another piece of my mind. But seriously, that hotel, what I saw, and I'm trying not to be bigoted, I'm trying not to be, but I didn't see a lot of glimmer, hope, and promise in that hotel. And if I'm telling you right now, if things go off the rails in this country, for whatever reason, whether it's a massive strike, whether all of a sudden the economy goes into the toilet, whether it's an EMP blast, whatever, we are in trouble. We're in trouble. Because the every man for himself modus operandi will kick in, and it will not be pleasant. So, if you are into preparation, which to some degree you need to be, let me just say this: you cannot prepare alone. You prepare alone, you are sunk. So, I would advise you to really get to know the people around you. And if you live in a community where there are 2 or 3 or 4 families that you know, you should get together on a semi-regular basis and just touch base and build a bond with these people. You don't have to talk about the end of the world. You don't have to talk about anything that is going to be scary or dramatic. What you want to do is you want to build bonds. Because when the time comes, those bonds will be priceless. Trust me. Trust me. Because I've seen the future in an emergency situation. It is not pretty. Not pretty. Speaking of not pretty, shall we talk about Debbie Wasserman? Oh no! I'm sorry. That was a bad moment. You can send me emails if you like. Let's talk about Debbie Wasserman. Debbie Wasserman is in the news because, by the way, before I launch into this, I know that I have been a little hard on George Webb. Only because I think that I have always trusted George Webb's motivations, but let it be part of the public record, whether anybody cares or not, that George Webb laid the tracks for the Iwan material, which we're going to talk about. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and congratulations, George, for sticking with the Iwan material. And this is a story that needs to be followed. You know, I had another experience. We're going to get back to the Iwan stuff. I had another experience when I was in Florida. This was on Sanibel Island. And I was in a liquor store. And I was thinking, maybe I'd like to smoke a cigar. I don't smoke cigars. But I'm thinking, I'm in Florida. Why don't I get a cigar? And why don't I get a rum drink? And have a rum drink and a cigar on the beach. Maybe even at sunset. Wouldn't that be a nice thing to do? And I don't know squat about cigars. All I know is that you got your Macanudo or the Havana. So I go in this liquor store and they have cigars there. And some of them are quite pricey. I'm not sure I want to spend $20 on a cigar. And I'm sure that that's a low price, by the way. So I'm looking at the $5, $6 cigar. I can go there. So I asked the guy behind the counter, hey, what do you know about these lower price cigars? So, I really don't know anything about that. You know, I'm into the Colorado cigar, if you know what I mean. I'm like, oh. He said, yeah, that's my thing. We're trying to get it here in Florida, but it's tough. Oh, really? So now I've got the liquor store clerk telling me that he's trying to bring in legal weed to Florida. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm sure Jeff Sessions is probably making that a bit difficult. And then he goes, well, I'm a Democrat, and he starts launching into this thing about Trump, and he's like laying out the game plan. It's like he's getting emails from, what is it, Orca, ORA, Aura, opposition, this thing that Obama's doing. He's got the game plan. Well, here's what's going to happen. This is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and he's going to try to move Sessions out. He won't be able to do it. We've got him cornered. And he's like, basically saying, we're going after him. I'm like, oh. And he's like quoting all the Russia stuff. And I'm like, oh, well, what about Hillary Clinton and Uranium One? And he looked at me like I was speaking in, Alpha Centaurian. Like, that Hillary Clinton did a deal with Russia and Putin and Uranium One Oh, well, it doesn't matter. That ship sailed. That was a stunning admission. That was a stunning admission because it gave me an insight into a certain mindset. It's like, there might have been crimes that have been committed. There could be upwards of 60 people that have died at the hands of the Clintons. But that ship has sailed. Don't worry about it. Move on. Here's the real story. This is what we really need to be getting at. Well, geez, I wonder how he feels about Debbie Wasserman. That ship has not sailed because that ship is in port. And Imran-Anwar is under house arrest with an anklet. Now, the rumor is that he and Debbie Wasserman were having an affair. A long-term affair. And the Anwars are a piece of work. And George Webb talked about how one of the things that they're into and have been into are this car theft ring. So these guys have their fingers in every single kind of gangster-like way of making money. I mean, they are a group of they're a crime family, essentially. They're a Pakistani crime family. His father, I think, disowned him because his son was a gangster. I guess if you grew up in Pakistan and under extreme conditions, it might twist your mind a little, test your moral conviction. I don't know. I know some Pakistanis, and they're good people. And this guy's not one of them. So he's under house arrest, and apparently, of course, I'm sure a lot of you know what's going on here, but the Anwars have been scraping material from Democrats for the last decade. That's right, they were running IT services for at least 30 Democrats in Washington, D.C. because they were the personal IT people for Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and she got them all these gigs with all these other people in Congress, and they were downloading all that stuff and selling all the information. It's insane. And Debbie, so this guy Imran-Anwar, who seems to be the crime lord of the Anwar family, was headed to Pakistan. He'd gotten everybody out except for him. They were on their way to get out of the country because the heat was on, and he got stopped. And so what happened is that he rented his house to a military family. And the military family found all these smashed hard drives and servers and whoa, what's going on here? So they called the FBI. Where the police and the FBI came in, and the FBI confiscated all this stuff. And then Anwar wanted to come back and grab all of it, and the guy wouldn't let him in. And Anwar was going to threaten to sue him and all this other bullshit. And he was like, okay, I got to get out of here. He goes to the airport. He's on his way to Karachi, and he gets stopped at the airport, and he's arrested. And apparently there was a D.C. cop that had one of the hard drives, and Debbie Wasserman Schultz was bullying him to try to get the hard drive back, and he wouldn't budge. And now he's got some access to it. So this is a very deep scandal. This is a really, really deep scandal. Van Jones called Russia a nothing burger. Well, this is a something falafel. Because this is where the media needs to. Now, Fox News has been reporting on this, which is interesting because these stories generally tend not to be reported on. Now, I think Debbie Wasserman Schultz's brother is a DA in Washington, D.C. So there's a possibility that if this case moves forward, her brother will be involved. And that guy needs to recuse himself immediately if that's the case, because he cannot adjudicate or be a part of a case where he has his own sister as an appendage to Imran-Anwar. Now, she was going to pay him money. The Awans, let me just tell you, where do you think that money is coming from? Do you think it's coming from the Debbie Wasserman Schultz family fund? No. It's coming to the Awans, likely through the taxpayers of Florida, which is where Debbie Wasserman Schultz is based out of, her constituency. They should be pissed. They should be totally pissed. Because the entire Awan family was on a payroll, ranging from $165,000 to $84,000. Even Awan's wife was on the payroll. Imran Awan's wife was on the payroll. And she was still going to pay him while he was in Pakistan. He lied for a loan. He got a $300,000 loan. He was pretending to be his wife. I mean, this is crazy, because I guess being a Pakistani woman, you get really fat loans at low percent interest. Where's all the money going? If he's selling all this information and he's in this car theft ring, and who knows what else he's in, where's the money going? That's what I want to know. This is a big deal. This is a really big deal. I mean, and you know that the MSM are not going to touch this thing, for the most part. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I would love nothing more than to see this detonate the DNC. And I would like nothing more for the RNC to get detonated too. I'm sorry. I'm in an equal opportunity mood of detonation today. Because those guys are worthless. That Obamacare thing is just a complete travesty. You know, John McCain with that scar over his eye, right? Is that the eye of Set? Is that what it is? Thumbs down! Oh my God! Don't you just want to hit McCain? I'd like to hit a lot of these guys. I've got anger issues got to work out. I know that. But it's ridiculous. You see, I think that they know that they don't care. They don't care. The only thing they care about is tarring and feathering Trump. That's the only thing they care about at this point in time. And having a monkey wrench to the process. That's it. Because I think they're all getting ready to split and go into their underground bases or their getaways somewhere, their bug out mansion somewhere. That's what I think, because they clearly don't give a shit. The Trump thing continues to be interesting, continues to reign chaos in D.C. Now. Anthony-scaramucci, who hadn't even officially started, his official start date was the 15th. He gets booted by John Kelly. It's just more fodder. And I kind of get what's going on here. They're trying to find the right combination of people. Trump comes from the corporate world. And in the corporate world, you got to have loyal soldiers. You have to have some form of synergy and chemistry in place. It's like a team, it's a team. And when you have somebody like Obama, it's pretty easy to put together a team of leftists. And people from Chicago, they come from the same place, they have the same ideology, they have the same goals in mind. There was no cognitive dissonance in the Obama administration. There was nobody where, and I could be wrong, and if I am, it would be the first time, but there was nobody really in the Obama administration Obama said, hey, I got to get rid of this person. Maybe Hillary. But that's about it. You didn't see this because they had an ideology and they had a goal. And when you look at Trump, you see people like Reince Priebus. These are compromised characters because they're coming from an establishment position, and Trump is not an establishment person. That's not who he is. It's not what he does. He's an outsider, and he may be a complete cuck to the deep state. He may be a complete cuck to the New World Order. He may be a complete cuck to Goldman Sachs and Israel. He may be all these things, but he's an outsider. He's a total outsider, and they're not going to tolerate him because he's got ideas that even the people that he may be a cuck to might be threatened by, because that's the nature of who he is. That's the Sun-Uranus conjunction. That's Trump in a nutshell. And so what he's trying to do is he's trying to root these people out and get the right mix. I understand, I get it. I'm not pulling an Alex Jones deal here, where if Trump shits, Alex Jones is, seeing it as a moment of prophecy. Yeah, it's not. That's not my goal here. Not my agenda. But I kind of get it. And Scaramucci was his way of finding somebody who was going to be tough and kind of be the ideological sort of mouthpiece for him. The problem with Scaramucci was his mouth, and he had a profanity-laced tirade, and in typical sort of Trump fashion, he got bumped. He's out. Right? We all know that now. He's out. And John Kelly's taken over, and now they're talking about Sean Spicer, bringing Sean Spicer back, which I don't necessarily. He seemed like a nice guy, but I don't agree with it. I think Trump has got to, if he's going to succeed, this reaching across the aisle has not worked. Hasn't worked. They're not buying him. You've got Democrats that vilify him, and then you've got these Republicans who can't stand him. How is he going to turn the tide here? By reaching across the aisle? It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. I think he needs to bring Rand Paul into the mix, because I think Rand Paul can be a real asset. One of the things they're talking about is Rand Paul's plan for replacing Obamacare and bringing it back to the states. Hello? I think it's a great idea. It's a great idea. So the few days that we had Anthony Scaramucci were infinitely entertaining, weren't they? It's like, who is this guy? Did he just step off the set of The Sopranos? Wow. And then his wife leaves him. He gets to the White House. He gets there, right? And his wife dumps him. So now he doesn't have the White House, and he doesn't have the wife. It's a rough week for Anthony the Mooch Scaramucci. Should I have the gunshot fire here? It's a lame gunshot fire, doesn't it? So we are in deconstruction phase. Look at what's happening in the White House. Look at what's happening with these political parties. They're being deconstructed. Now the left is kind of trying to reinvent themselves. They're basically now taking Trump's talking points, which they should have done about 10 years ago and really cared about the quote-unquote common man. There's none of that in the Obama administration. A bunch of horse shit, sorry. They didn't care about anybody but themselves and their Saul Alinsky game plan. But look, maybe we should address the needs of the people. And you've got Nancy Pelosi out there talking about the needs of the people versus this crazy identity politics. Anyway, we're in the deconstruction phase. The left, the right, the center, even in our own lives, we're in a deconstruction phase. Now, deconstruction phases can be very creative if you don't get freaked out by the deconstruction. It can be very creative. But you have to know how to roll with it. You have to believe in yourself and a higher plan. That's because if you don't have a belief in the higher plan, the belief in the self will only get you so far. And eventually, that's tested. But if you have a belief in yourself and the higher plan, even the higher plan will get tested at times. But at least if you adhere to that and you know you're on the right path, then you are shown, essentially, kind of the next step, and next step, and next step. And next thing you know, you're like, oh man, I'm glad I'm doing this. Especially if you work for yourself, like I do. And I'm in the process of rededicating myself to that higher plan. That's part of the plan. So where are you? Where are you in your plan, in your life? Do you have no plan? That's okay too. Not having a plan is okay. Not having a plan is okay. Because if you don't have a plan, you say, okay, well, what's my plan? Show me. I'm ready. I'm here. I've been getting into a lot of the Christian stuff lately. I find it fascinating. And I always go into these debates inside of my head about the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament. And I found this one video. Guy makes videos on YouTube. His name is Nicholson1968. He makes really good videos. Really, really good videos. He's a Christian. And he was talking about this. I found this to be funny. He was talking about this Droid commercial. It was Android technology for the phone. And it's really dark. Really, really, really dark. Gets into black goo and programmable biosynthetic material and all that stuff. And he has these things, and I'm going to show you this commercial, and I'm going to show you something that nobody else has seen. And I'm like, okay. Show it. Oh, really? Okay. Well, that was a bit dramatic, don't you think? For a Christian? A lot of chest thumping going on there, buddy. No, I'm not being a cynic, but I've been getting into some of the stuff lately. It's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. So even if you don't have a plan, it's okay, because that's part of the higher plan sometimes. So, where are you? Where are you with all that? Where are you with your faith in who you are and what you do and who you love and who loves you and what your next steps are? And it's okay if it's not unshakable. It's okay. That's the parable of the mustard seed, isn't that what that's about? But it's something we're going to need to build. I'm going to tell you that right now. We're going to need to build this faith piece. Now, do you have to take his one and only son into your life in order to have that faith? Well, there's some people that say yes. And there's some people that say, well, he's already died for our sins, and he's already brought his A game to the planet, and that's part of you. So now you've got to live up to your end of the bargain. It's on you. It's an interesting dance, isn't it? Well, we've hit the 44-minute mark. And I think it's about time for me to sign off here. Not a bad show for the first day back. What do you think, boys and girls? Were you happy? It's enthusiastic. Yeah. All right. It's good to be back. Thank you for those of you who sent me emails and told me that you missed my broadcast. All 5 of you, thank you so much for that. Really appreciate it. It gives me a little more faith in what I do. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to step when it's possible. I'll be back 24 hours from today. I'm Robert Phoenix. You can go to my website, robertphoenix.com. And oh, by the way, I want to point out that I will be at Transparacon in September, and I've got a new video, a new show that I did with Randy Moggins and Emily Moore on Off Planet Radio. I did it while I was in Florida. I thought it was really good. I hope it's up soon. And check that out over on Off Planet, and of course all their fantastic videos and work that Randy and Emily do over there. All right. Have a great day. I'll see you guys back tomorrow.